Welcome back to another week of Striper season updates with On the Water. I'm your host, Matt Haeffner, and since April 1st, we've been bouncing around the Striper coast following the Striper migration across the Northeast. We've spoken to different captains, shop owners, anglers, and more to give you the inside scoop on how the bite has changed as the migration's progressed. Now, as we near the end of June and head into some of the warmest months of the year, migration is winding down and fish are settling into those areas where they'll spend the next couple of months feeding prior to beginning the fall migration. Last week, I spoke to On the Water's own Jimmy Fee about the bait fish buffet on Cape Cod, understanding water temperatures, and how to read the water for current breaks and eddies where bass will hunker down to feed. This week, we'll be heading up the coast to speak with Captain Lou Tirado of Diamond Pass Outfitters in Portland, Maine. Captain Lou is a regular contributor to On the Water magazine and writes the monthly fishing planner for coastal Maine in our New England issues. He charters inshore fishing trips, fly fishing trips, but his favorite way to fish is throwing topwater plugs for striped bass. Maine's long and rocky coastline is dotted with bays and river mouths that give bass plenty of space to roam and feed. In Captain Lou's June fishing planner, he delves into the various baits around Maine's rivers and how to locate fish by understanding where certain species of bait will be. So to get a better understanding of the bite around southern Maine in late June, here's Captain Lou Tirado of Diamond Pass Outfitters. All right, thanks a lot for joining us this week, Captain Lou. It's a pleasure to have you, man.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm excited.
Yeah, man. It's so we right before we got on, we were talking a lot about fly fishing and stuff because I had just gotten my first striper fly rod, not fly rod. I've been using a 5-weight and stuff, catching sunnies and trout before, but really pushing some big flies to stripers this season is my goal. So we'll talk a little bit about that, but I wanted to ask you just how your season's been to start off, and what you've been doing mostly and seeing in terms of the striper bite and bait around you.
Yeah, season's been going good. It started early, which was cool. Like we got an early push of fish. I'd say right around Mother's Day, we got some fish up here in the marshes, and that was exciting. And then we kind of hit like a little lull. The first couple weeks of June, it wasn't what it should have been. And then just the last couple of days, man, it's really kicked off. It's been awesome. So I don't know if it's moon cycle or what, or if it was just. I mean, it's been cold. Good Lord, it's been like I get on the boat in the morning, it's like 39, 40 degrees. I'm like, it's almost July. I can't believe it. But it seems to be on the upswing, and I'm excited for it right now.
Yeah, and we know that they like cold water, but in the middle of June, 39 is a little bit chilly, I'd say. The other day was 60 here, though. It was on Sunday, cold, foggy, and wind was blowing like crazy. It was really chilly. But sometimes, so that's one of the things I wanted to touch on is the conditions that you find ideal for striper fishing too, because I know you do a lot of charter fishing. So striper fishing to me, half the time the wind, the cold, the rain is the best thing. That'll help the bite. So what in your experience this year has been like the best conditions for getting out on the water with the fish?
Man, just cloud cover. As long as you got clouds, and it's not bright sun, for the most part, the fish will stay active and you can get on them. It's like you or I. Like if it's bright sunny, it's nice out, but you don't want to look up in the sky. You're like, that kind of hurts. Like they're not rocking coasters or anything. So if I can get cloud cover in the morning and a light variable wind, just a little bit on the kind of break up that surface a little bit. That's my jam. I love that.
Yeah, I would agree. I think cloud cover, most of my most memorable days of striper fishing, with maybe one or two exceptions of a nice sunrise bite, have been really cloudy, kind of muggy, just not the best days. And sometimes it's the wind's blowing right in your face, and you get a little bit of chop, especially on a boat. I'd imagine you brave those conditions all the time for that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and usually like the wind blowing in your face. If you're from shore and the wind's blowing on your face, it's blowing that bait right to you. So those fish are gonna be right at your feet. You know.
And so you talk a little bit about it in your June fishing planner for coastal Maine, which I was reading before this. But what kind of bait have you guys been seeing out there for somebody who hasn't read that yet?
Yeah, so to start, in May, like when the fish first show up, they're up in the marshes and back bays, and I believe they're so hungry from. I mean, they swim like we're at the end of it. We're at the end of the migration, so they're coming from Maryland and the Hudson up in the Chesapeake and out Maryland, the Hudson, New York, and everything, and they're just opportunistic. But our primary forage that we have is we've got alewives. They'll show up first as they're making their way upstream to spawn. And then in the marshes, you got like your mummy chogs. There's a ton of shrimp, ton of little crabs, your sea worms, the sandworms, bloodworms. We've got these things called milky ribbon worms. It looks weird. It's this long white worm that the bass love them. They're super fragile, so nobody really digs them and fishes with them just because they fall apart. But you'll see them, and the bass will just suck them right out, man. They love it. when you get a good storm, like we get a lot of soft shell clams, they call them steamers and stuff, the basilitos. Um, but yeah, I mean, honestly, they're really opportunistic. So, like in the springtime, I don't know if it really matters. I think they're just so hungry that they're just ready to eat. You just got to put something in front of them. But right now, we've got all the herring and alewives that went upriver. They're dropping back down. They're just starting to drop down, which is awesome. We've got mackerel in the inshore waters, and the pogies just showed up too. So things are building and they're looking good.
Yeah, that the bunker bite seems to be going on pretty much everywhere except right where I'm fishing. I haven't really found too many bunker, but I don't know if the south side of the Cape is necessarily known for having a ton of bunker. I think it's more of like a Buzzards Bay type thing. They really get funneled through there, and they're there for a little while. They'll hang out, but those moon tides, like we were talking about as well before we started recording, are just going to push them right through there.
Yeah, it seems like Buzzards Bay, like Boston Harbor, North Shore, that area right there, the last few years had like a massive bunker bite, like just big fish. We got some fish up here, but not like down there.
Yeah, no, and it's funny. A lot of my friends down on, I'm from Long Island. I forgot to mention that to you, but a lot of my buddies from down on Long Island are having like one of the most memorable springs in their entire lives because the bunker have just stuck around there. And I think I mean, that now there's a ton of them still. And I talked to Joe Diorio about it a little bit, but he was waiting on the bunker to show up with that full moon. And they seem to have not left Long Island Sound. The Long Island Sound is holding tons of just fields of them.
Yeah, and it seems to be there's like a big old population of big fish down in that area too that just kind of stick around.
Oh,
So
definitely.
it's
Yeah, I
just
mean, it's
prime,
easy for
I
them
mean,
too. Yeah,
yeah, it's just prime pickings for them. It's what
yeah.
they want.
And so when you're targeting things like alewives and you're talking about all these little worm hatches and stuff that go on in the earlier season, especially in the marshes and whatnot, that's got to be prime time for fly fishing and throwing light tackle and stuff like that. So what are some of the options that do you have any flies or baits on hand that you could show us that you could?
I've got a couple. So for like light, I don't have any flies with me right now, but I do have some like the spooks that we use. These little things here. These are from Two Lights Tackle. So I love a spook for all year, but especially early season back bay and stuff like that. And I love it because it's so versatile. Like if you have like your standard popper, like you can swim some of like the Gibbs style Polaris. You can kind of swim those, but for the most part, it's just a real like aggressive pop splash, and then a pencil popper is cool, and it has its purpose. When there's mackerel around or in some heavy current, like in the canal and stuff, and in rivers, but they're exhausting to work. It's exhausting, and it's just guys like they just you can't do it for 4 to 6 hours at a time. But these spooks here, man, they cast well and you can speed it up and make it work like a pencil where you're just flopping that head back and forth and making that erratic, but you can get that side to side, lazy top water, kind of just like a dock or anything, but on a scaled down version. And I love these because they're wooden. So versus like a jumping minnow, which is a great plug. I mean, I don't know how it's probably caught millions of bass in its lifetime. But they'll get blown out of water, and next thing you know, it's cartwheeling through, which is great to see. But the hooks are filed, and the leader's all jacked up. These things will hold, and when the fish hit them, they hang on to it, and it doesn't fly away from them. So I love these things. Like the guy makes them. He makes these little ones. These are 4.5 inches, and he makes a 7 inch one that's just freaking killer. It sits right. It sits just like this, and it holds. And I don't know, they're just rock solid. The paint holds up. I mean, I'm not a big proponent of color, like bone, yellow. Like it's all you need.
I was going to say those seem to be two of the key colors for whether you're throwing darters or docks or whatever you're throwing. Bone white is really hard to beat.
Yeah, I mean, they look at the bottom. Like you look at the bottom of every bait fish, it's freaking white or silver for the most
Exactly.
part. And I'm a profile guy. Like match the profile and find what they want. And this is easy.
Yeah.
Small fish will hit this, big fish will hit this. It's good to go.
And I'm glad you brought up the action of it too, because I think that and I do it too, just because I'm eager to get a bite or drive an aggressive strike sometimes. But that quick back and forth action often doesn't produce a strike for me. It's that long kind of like lazy back and forth action,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not just with spooks. That goes for a lot of different things. I think it really just imitates an injured bunker so well.
100%.
And there's other lures that guys have been fishing with this entire season, like flutter spoons are something that guys have been using a lot. And it's because of that flutter action they have back and forth as it drops through the water column. They get hit bit on the drop. It's not even like you got to really jig it or anything.
Yeah, well, like I said earlier, these fish, they're opportunistic feeders, and especially the bigger fish, they're not going to waste their time and energy. It's a reward, like versus like a kind of reward thing. Like if they can get the maximize their energy for the biggest reward, that's what they're going to do. So if they get to chase down something that's going freaking berserk through the water, it really better be worth it. But if they can just they see this thing limping around, they can come up, spend half as much energy and whack it and eat it. That's what they want. Same with the flutter spoons and like the darters and stuff. Like it's just a big slow swoop, versus like, not that to be like the magic swimmers don't work, but that's a real erratic kind of swim action. Like it's got its purpose, but for the most part, they like that slower stuff. They're just it's easier for them, and especially the bigger bass. Like the small ones will come up and whack the hell out of a pencil popper or whatever. But
Yeah, and I think that's a good way to. It's a good thing to keep in mind too if you want to kind of weed out the bluefish for certain bites and stuff. Like I know from my experience when I'm fishing in an area that there's blues and bass, you can get past the blues by just giving a nice long pop and then letting it sit. If you work that thing erratically, the bluefish are going to go nuts for it, and the bass are never going to get to it. So if you give it a nice long pause, if there's anything tailing on it, they're going to give it a better look, and the bass will more likely go for it than the blue.
no doubt,
Yeah,
you can send all your bluefish up here, man. We love them. We don't get them often, so you can send them right up here. I
oh
love it.
man, you're telling me.
Talk about a season saver.
We get them down here on the Cape, but not like I used to get them at home on Long Island. That's another thing that I totally miss from down there, and I've talked about it a lot.
Those things are so much fun.
Since the start of this season, it's been a great season for bluefish too. We Dustin Stevens was on here on April, like the second week of April, talking about a bunch of bluefish he caught from his kayak on April 1st.
That's killer. Well, we had them last year. Hopefully they show back up.
Yeah.
But getting back to like the fly stuff, um, I like to keep it simple. Like honestly, keep it as simple as you can. Like I love like a hollow fly, in that 4 to 6 inch range. That's your ultimate bait. Like honestly, that's got the perfect profile. It's big enough to get the attention of a real fish. Small enough, where the smaller fish will still eat it. And I mean, schoolies are great on fly rods. They're awesome. You get a 20 to like 24 inch fish on an 8 weight. That's a great day. You can get if you can get a pile of those, people are happy. You know, but yeah, like the Popovich hollow fly, and that's got to be one of the coolest flies, and most simple to tie, and just no frills. Keep it super sparse. It moves and pulsates through the water, moves some water. And it's just easy to cast. I love them. I absolutely, it's the coolest thing to do. And then like Clousers. I mean, you can't beat a Clouser, honestly. But I like tying these. The guy that owns Jim Bernstein, he owns Eldridge Brothers up here. He's down south of me, down in like the York Kittery area. He tied up this. It's a guitar minnow, and it's basically just a souped up half and half. That he uses a couple hackles, some peacock herl with the bucktail, and then some rabbit for the throat. And the thing is killer, man. It pushes water, it bounces, it can look like a bait fish, it can look like a shrimp, you can dredge it and just puff sand, make it look like a crab, and it's an awesome fly.
Yeah, the versatility is hugely important because then that means you can probably throw it in an array of different, environments, right?
Exactly. And that's the ticket. Like you don't want to be sitting there changing flies all day long. Like just because you're going from like especially around me, like I can go from a river system to a flat to an island within like 150 yards of each other. So going from one fly, when you're just constantly cutting off, rechanging, tying tip it, it's not feasible. It's not smart. You're just wasting a lot of time and a lot of money. But if you can get some stuff like that, and we've had a really cool shrimp bite the last couple of years, like in our marshes and rivers where we're throwing a lot of floating lines, and just like it's almost like you're steelheading, like you're swinging shrimp, and the fish they look like you'll see them in early June just coming up, and all you see is like noses and eyeballs, and they're feeding like trout. And you're like, it took me a little while to figure it out. I was like, what the hell is happening? Like throwing all the stuff they wouldn't hit topwater, wouldn't hit a sluggo, wouldn't hit a deceiver, nothing. You're like, all right. And you're like, well, I got this shrimp. I'll throw that out there and see what happens. And we just kind of like tight line it like you would for like if you were steelheading or you were trout fishing, and it worked. oh, kind of unlocked that, and that was cool.
I'm glad you brought that up because this is one of the things that made me just like go and get my rod, my reel spooled up, my fly reel, because I was having the same issue. I was fishing a little bit of a back bay, actually a pinch point, kind of near a river mouth, and it's got some great current. And these bass were just coming up late at night, slurping grass shrimp off the surface.
Yeah, man.
And because they were so small and they were so keyed in, I couldn't. It didn't matter what I threw at them. I couldn't trick them. So I went down to the store. I was like, I'm going to start pushing flies at these things. And now I think it's about that time. Of course, the grass shrimp have probably moved out now that I've got my fly ready. But that's it. It's just it's got to be a great tool, and you can use it out front. You can use it in the back bays. It's
Oh yeah.
really
Well, there'll be shrimp up in the back bays, up in those like on the grass all year long. Like I just fished the. We were just down the Cape for the Cheeky tournament, fishing the Bass River, and like we were walking the shoreline, and it was just clouds and clouds of shrimp. And I don't think they go offshore. I think they just stick in there. But guys get, as the season progresses, we change too. We're like, oh man, the pogies are here, the mackerel are here. I gotta start throwing beast flies and game changers and doing all this crap. But really, these fish are still in there cruising, and it's an easy meal. They're just like a basking shark, just open their mouth and swoop, and they got a mouthful and they're good.
totally. And when do you start to see kind of the fish move from the rivers and the back bays out front? Because I know that there's so much structure back there that I would imagine some of them got to stick around for like the rest of the couple months that they'll be up there. And then there's got to be a population like ocean run fish that kind of just stick around out front. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Usually like mid June. We're a couple weeks behind, it seems right now, but mid June, out front is usually lights out. Like we get like the little Brit herring will show up, and the bass will be on them pretty heavy out front. Um, and then there's guys that are out. I got some buddies that like they're just diehard surf casters, and they've been out at night, on the beach fronts and out on the ledges, and they're whacking big fish already. And it's I would say mid June and all the way through the rest of the season, you can get the fish out front.
So going back to the fly, because I would love to know that we were talking about the Clouser and the versatility of that fly and how you can kind of throw it anywhere. But what type of fly line are you typically using? Because when you're chartering with people who maybe have never casted a fly line before, or somebody like me who's going to be learning how to use a 9 weight, what kind of fly line do you use, and how do you recommend? Like, how do you?
Yeah, so on the boat we've got them all. We've got the floating, the intermediate, and the fast sinkings. Um, when they're just if the first rod I like to hand people, it's got an intermediate. Like the floating line, it's good, but you're limited. To what you're going to be able to do, especially where you're fishing. Like if we're on like a real skinny flat, we could throw the floating line and that's fine.
Yeah.
But if we're up in the rivers and we've got 20, 30 feet of water and some moving current, that floating line's not really going to do much for us. That we're just going to skate and get a lot of drag. And
Right.
so, um, ideally, and like I'll give you the intermediate because it's going to be a slow sink. I think mine are they're like 4 to 5 inches per second they sink.
Hmm.
But it gives you enough weight where you can load it up pretty good without a lot of false casts and then just send it. That's really the idea is 1 or 2 false casts, and then these lines with the super aggressive heads on them now, you can get it out and just get it out there.
Yeah.
30, 40 feet. That's all you need. That's what I tell my guys. Like, give me 40 feet and we'll get some fish, man. Like we can get you.
Okay.
Give me 10. We got a lot of work to do today.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the sinking lines are great. I mean, they load and they go, but it takes a little bit of getting used to. And it doesn't. I mean, if you've got the mechanics down and the basics, quick double haul, and you can get it out there, and you can really do some damage with a sinking line. I really like a fast sinking line if I'm fishing clousers because
Okay.
I'm already trying to get it down, and what I'm
Right.
trying to do is avoid a big belly in the line. So those with that shooting head or the fast sinking lines, however you want to call them, doesn't really matter. You can go shooting head, old school, fast sinking nowadays.
Right.
Is the shorter you want run a shorter leader, because you don't want that big belly. So that way you stay in contact with that fly.
Hmm.
And I don't really think the bass are all that leader shy anyway. Not this time of year for sure, but 5, 6 foot leader of fluorocarbon, you're good to go.
Awesome. That's really good. That's good to know. Yeah. So, and I'd imagine, yeah, when you were figuring out how that grass shrimp bite was going, that the floating line was hugely important, right?
Oh, it was the only way to do it.
Yeah.
It was the only way to do it because these shrimp are just like an inch or two under the surface, just kind of going with the current. So if I was too low, we weren't doing anything, and like, it just kind of looked funny. You kind of want like the one I use is by Mud Dog Flies. This Mike, he tied. I think it's like a DC-10 or something. I forget what it's called, but it's this goofy looking fly. It doesn't look like much of anything, and it's amazing. And you just swing it and just keep it going, with the current, and it's gold.
Yeah, it's. I was actually I took one of my my 5 weight out just because of out of frustration and was trying to throw a little mantis shrimp fly at them, and
Yeah, man, it'll work.
they were
Just
going
hang
for
on.
it. I just couldn't seem to get the hook set, and then actually I snapped off because I think one of them slurped it, and I just it's a 5 weight, so if it was anything bigger than I think 20 inches, I was kind of screwed. But it was oh, yeah, I was at least experimentation is part of it.
And that's the fun part of fishing, man. That's why you do it. Try different things. Like that's how you learn. That's what you do. You screw up and you figure it out and you break off. You're like, all right, well that kind of worked, but how can I make it so it works better next time?
Yeah, absolutely. And so we were just talking about how you think June is like kind of a few weeks behind in terms of finding fish out front and stuff. So what do you think that implies for July? Because we're coming towards the new moon at the end of June.
I think, judging from what I've seen the last couple days, I think we're gonna go from like 0 to 100. Honestly, like
So,
I think it was just cold, weather wise up here, and we had a few fronts that came through, and
yeah.
um, weather looks good. Like the extended forecast looks really good for the next couple weeks, and I think it's just gonna explode. Honestly, we
You think
should
you'll get
be.
probably
I think
another
we're
good
gonna go from honestly like 0 to 100 and be right back to where we're supposed to be. And it'll
nice.
be just like spin your head kind of fast kind of thing. So
And so pogies are really the only other bait that you're expecting up there.
yeah, yep, yeah. Starting to see some. I saw some of the pogie boats out front the other day.
Cool.
I've heard talk to some lobstermen. Those are your best resources. Like, the
Yep.
guys that are out here, lobstering every day. They see everything. They know what's going on.
I'm
They get
sure.
stuff in their traps. Those are the guys to talk to.
Yeah.
Make friends with them. And yeah, we should see them. And once that happens, the fish they seem to be bigger this year. We got that year class. I think it's what the 2015 year class,
I believe so.
which is all like that should, in theory, put the fish in like that 24 to 30-inch range.
Yep.
Those are good fish. Those are fun fish, and seeing some better fish too that are prime for eating pogies because it's a big bait.
So I wanted to ask you not to like rush things at all because I know we're just talking about July, but like I've never fished coastal Maine. I've had a lot of experience paddling up there, kayaking on the Penobscot River and the Kennebec River and stuff like that. So when do you start to see the fish like kind of start migrating south again? Like not like I said, not to rush things or think about them even moving south, but I'd be curious to know how long your season really lasts in Maine because
Oh, you know what? Yeah, everybody thinks it's over in September. It's not. Like, we'll get a push of fish that come, like, our southern Maine fish will start to push out, like, mid-September and head down towards you guys. But there's all those fish from the Kennebec and Mid-Coast that are still coming down. We get fish through, like, I got my last fish last year, November 1st. Yeah. I mean, the water's still warm, and that's the ticket. It's that 50-degree mark. It's still 50. The only reason it was November 1st is I got tired and cold, and they pulled all the docks. Like up here, they pull all the docks on November 1st. It's like you have a parking ban, and all the docks get pulled the same day. You're like, oh, all right. Well, I guess we're done for the year. Back into darkness. But honestly, man, like I would say our new fall run it starts in October. In October, some of our best fishing. It's amazing. It's not as visual like it used to be because we just don't have the peanut bunker, but the fish are here, they're hungry, and you can, like it seems like there's a nice fish on every freaking corner. So you just work it and you have a good day.
yeah. Do you guys get a good holdover population up there?
I think we do. I think there's definitely a lot of guys that go out, but it gets cold and a lot of our stuff freezes up. Like our marshes will freeze up and with surface, like not like you can walk on the ice, but they're all locked up. I know a lot of the guys are starting to do some sea run brown trout fishing off the beaches during the winter, and they'll stay out as long as they can until their stuff freezes up. But the state's been doing a lot of stocking with those.
Do you ever find that that the bass actually like will feed on the brown trout because this is going off on a little bit of a tangent here, but like there's a couple rivers I know of on Long Island where we have sea run brown trout because they stock them, and there's also a couple places I think here um, in Cape Cod on Cape Cod that they do it as well. So I'm curious, and I've actually seen a striper eat a brown off of a guy's line before, which is kind of crazy. So I'm wondering if that happens up there as well.
Yeah, I think so. the state was stocking, I forget the strain that they were stocking before, but it was a much smaller fish, and I've got no doubt that the bass would eat those. But they're starting to stock what's called a New Gloucester strain, and a lot of these fish are like already like 20 inches to like 30. So I don't the bass aren't gonna mess with them. Maybe. I mean, that'd be a hell of a bass. But like I've caught a couple like mixed in with bass, like on the same like sandio fly. Like you hook something, you're like, that's fighting totally different, and instead of like the bulldog fight that a striper would do, it's kind of doing these twirls and spins. You're like, what the hell am I fighting here? And it comes up and it's a sea run that's like 18 to 20 inches. Pretty
Definitely.
cool.
That's awesome. Hey, well, thanks a lot for joining us, Lou. This has been
Dude, absolutely, man.
learned a lot about the fly myself, and I'm looking forward to using maybe some of the tactics you talked about. And
Yeah, just get out there and throw it.
yeah, it's the only way to do it, man. Well, it's
That's
been a
it.
pleasure, and tight lines to you, my friend.
All right, thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
That's all the time we have for this week. Thanks again to Captain Lou Tirado for joining me to talk striped bass fishing in Maine for the first time in this series. Although the season kicks off a bit later up here in Captain Lou's neck of the woods, it doesn't remotely take away from the intensity of the spring run when the bass do arrive. Going into the end of June, keep in mind what Lou said about finding bass out front rather than around the rivers. The weather's been a bit chilly, but as the water warms and more bunkers show up, the big bass will follow. For now, though, it sounds like there's plenty of fish in the slot range for Maine anglers to enjoy to the fullest. Don't forget, you can still sign up for Striper Cup if you haven't already. To learn more about the striper migration, check out onthewater.com, subscribe to our YouTube and the magazine, and check out our social media pages at On the Water Magazine. Thanks again for watching, and be sure to check back next week for the final installation of this spring's striper season updates with On the Water.